Nine has been shaping up to be one of the easiest to use high damage floor and possibly potentially high damage ceiling characters as well. What's going on? Welcome back. It's me. I'm sick. You're not going to see me on camera, but let's get through at least a little bit of an intro to Nine for you today. Now, regardless of everything that we talk about in this video is going to be basically telling you the basis of what you're going to be expecting from Nine. Now, no matter which of the builds you're going to be going for, they're all going to be based around her key card in the form of Hue. Now, I do want to tell you exactly how this works real quick, and it's based around this new keyword of Incinerate. You can see that this has unique, initiation, exhaust, as well as ephemeral on it. Basically, what this means is this card is an exhaust card and it will auto exhaust at the end of the turn due to ephemeral. It also will start in your opening hand due to initiation. And as you can see down here, the Incinerate effect says create one Hue level 1. This is the base version. Now, no matter how this card gets exhausted, whether it's in your hand at the end of the turn, you exhaust it with another character's card like Raise, Snack Time, or if you cast this card using something else like one of Nine's cards in Fighting Spirit, it's going to trigger this Incinerate effect and it will upgrade over time. Now, this is going to be the basis of your build. And one of the main ways that you're gonna be focusing on a base version for your Nine build in the form of Hue depends on which Hue you're going for. Ironclad gives you a little bit of shielding when you cast Hue. So if you want to go for a defensive oriented option, you can go for that. One of the most used ones I see out there is going to be the Extreme Hue. This one actually levels up far more, all the way up to level 5 and goes up to a 1,200% defense based damage multiplier and actually gets its cost reduced by 1 down to a maximum of 2 as well, so you can actually easily hard cast this version of Hue. There's also the counterattack Hue Ambush, where it will auto cast itself if you counterattack with an ally. Even though this one doesn't go all the way up to 5, it still is a nice way to get some free value out of your Hue as well. There's also some interesting builds that we're not going to touch on too much in this video with Hue Flash. And I do want to note though that this is going to be something we want to delve into more on a future Nine video that I don't think a lot of players are talking about right now, because this version of Hue actually has ignition on it as a keyword as well, which will reduce the cost of Hue Flash when someone exhausts a card in your party. So think of something like Shadow Daggers and Advanced Shadow Daggers from Tressa can work. Quest for Rewards can reduce this card from Cassius. You can exhaust cards with Snack Time. You can exhaust cards by using other characters like Orlia with her little pets that are exhausting. There's a totally different exhaust build based around Hue Flash. But if we just wanted to focus on like the generic Hue build for you today with Hue Extreme or any of the Hues in general, the main card that you're going to be duplicating isn't going to be Hue because it's unique, but what you're going to be duplicating to get a lot of value out of your Nine build right off the gates is going to be Fighting Spirit, because it's going to activate the highest cost attack card of this unit of 9 in your hand and then exhaust the card, which is going to be Hue, because all of her other cards for the most part are going to be 1 cost, meaning that when you're building your save data for your Nine, you're going to want to duplicate Fighting Spirit at least 2 times. You're going to have like 2 to 3 copies. So the basis of your build is just going to be make as many Fighting Spirits in your save data as possible for right now to maximize how many times you can get Hue off in succession, so you can level it up on Hue Extreme, for example, to level this up and do damage over and over and over and over. That's going to be the basis of the base version of a Nine deck, but there are going to be a couple of other things we need to talk about when it comes to card choices. Now, if you're removing cards from your Nine deck, the number 1 card you should probably be removing is the back edge parry. This is just a shield. We don't really care about that. Her other base cards of Slash you can remove as well. Remember, save data is a little bit different. We have more save data room. It's cheaper to remove cards in general. If you want to remove all 3 of your base cards, the shield in both of her slashes, it's only going to cost you 60 faint memory points. It's not going to cost you 100 anymore. However, this card still is pretty decent, as it's going to increase the amount of damage exhaust cards do by 15% for 1 turn, and that is going to affect Hugh as well. So it's not a totally dead card, because, well, Hugh also is an exhaust card. Now, when we're looking at the other couple of Epiphany cards here, what you want to be picking from these ones is going to be based on what version of Hugh you're using in the team composition that you are trying to accomplish. For example, Experience Strike here is just going to be a better version of her base card on the baseline here. It's going to increase the amount of damage your exhaust cards do by 20% baseline instead of 15% like her basic card does. However, some of the epiphanies that are pretty good here, number 1 is going to be Epiphany 1, which is going to be 30% damage bonus for exhaust cards. So this is going to buff up the amount of damage that your Hugh is going to do. Number 2, 3, as well as 4 are sort of more focused on making Experience Strike do more damage or give you a little bit more shielding. It doesn't really focus into her game plan like the Epiphany 1 and the Epiphany 5 are going to do. If you're going for that Counter-Strike Hugh build, you can pick up the 5th Epiphany of Experience Strike, which allows you to actually gain a counter attack when you exhaust a card, which works very, very well with the form of Hugh that actually auto casts itself when somebody counter attacks. So you can utilize Hugh Ambush in conjunction with the Counter-Strike Epiphany 5 Experience Strike to sort of get a couple of free casts of your Hugh off as well if you're in a Counter-Strike focused build. Now, the other one that we want to talk about here is Fatal Strike. Fatal Strike costs 1, and it increases the amount of damage to Fatal Strike based on the highest cost exhaust cards in your hand. A lot of the epiphanies for this as well are buffing up the amount of damage that Fatal Strike is going to be doing, whether it's based on the amount of counterattacks that your teammates have or the different costs of the cards in your hand. 2 interesting ones is going to be Fatal Strike Epiphany 3, which costs 5, but this one does have Ignition, and this cost is going to be reduced every single time a card is exhausted out of your hand. So if you're going for the exhaust archetype, the exhaust team with Orlia, or you're using some other characters like Shadow Dagger Tressa, trying that out as well, you can reduce this pretty easily down to a 0 cost in a lot of circumstances and immediately change that Hue to its final form, which is very, very good if you're using the max damage Hue, which goes all the way up to level 5, which is going to be the Epiphany 2 of Hue Extreme. That's a very easy way to cheat all the way up to a 1,200% damage multiplier on Hue Extreme right out the gate if you want to so do that. Another thing that I like with Fatal Strike, and my favorite one in a lot of circumstances in her best teams, are actually going to be the 4th Epiphany of Fatal Strike. This one exhausts 2 random exhaust cards of other combatants in your hand. So it's not going to be exhausting Hue. It's not exhausting your 9s cards. It's going to be exhausting like the creations of Orlia or the Shadow Daggers of Tressa or the quest rewards of Cassius. And what this is going to do is for each of those cards exhausted, it's going to bump up the damage of the next attack card of 9 by 30% multiplicatively for each of those cards. So if you exhaust 2 cards, this can be a 60% damage bonus to the next card that's an attack card. So what you're going to want to do is use this to exhaust some Shadow Daggers or the sturdy creation from Orlia, any of that garbage that you've generated to bump up the next attack that you do. And you want to use this right before you cast Fighting Spirit, which is going to auto cast the Hue for you, and you'll get a giant damage bonus on that Hue. So for Fatal Strike, I really like this one. I know it seems like it's a little more niche than the other ones, but a lot of the best 9 teams are going to have partners and character combatants that are going to be generating cards that have exhaust in your hand, which we'll touch more on when we talk about characters you should compare 9 with real quickly. This is one of the easiest ways to bump up the damage of your big attack on Hue for 9. The other card we want to talk about is Counterblade, and this one has a couple different Epiphany choices for you to choose from. When a card is exhausted, you can gain Honed Edge, which is one of them right here, which gives you a damage bonus for your 9 cards for the turn. So if you're in an exhaust focus 9 team, this one works very well for you. If you are in a more defensive oriented team where you're generating a bunch of shields, you can choose this one and get Honed Edge that way. This is more useful on a shielding type, slower damage team. Think like Magna, Maribel. Pair those characters up with your 9. That'll work pretty well there for you. On top of that, you also have the ability for the Epiphany 4 to gain Honed Edge plus when a counter attack is gained. So if you are in a counter focused team, you can pick up this Epiphany, and this works very well on the counter focused version of 9 there. And if at the end of the day, you don't really have any sort of thing going on for you, you just kind of want a general free value over multiple turns, you can always pick up this version of Counterblade that's just going to automatically activate the version of Hue you have in your hand at the start of the battle, which is just free damage for you. It's not my favorite one though, and I think you're kind of cheapening your experience by saying you're lazy if you pick this one, and I'd really focus it on picking either the exhaust one, the counterattack one, or the shield one based on which version of a team you're going to be putting your 9 in. And you're not going to have a lot of decisions as far as duplicating a bunch of cards, because at the end of the day, the best thing you should be focusing on for most of these builds is going to be Fighting Spirit. So Divine Epiphanies don't matter a crazy ton when you're putting your first 9 build together. Now, when we're talking about characters to utilize with 9, as far as combatants to pair with her, anything that kind of exhausts and can bump up the damage for you is going to be very well there. One of the best ways to bump up someone's damage like 9 is going to be someone who can apply vulnerability massively multiple times, so you can double the damage or boost the damage that you're doing with your Hues from the vulnerable debuff. And Orlia is going to be one of her best partners, I think, in a lot of team compositions, especially after her buff. This is because we have the combination of growth acceleration on this version here, where you're going to be doubling down on being able to give damage buffs to 9 in a lot of ways. One of the best ways to bump up the damage for a character like 9 is to give them multiplicative damage buffs, like the version of Softy here, which is just going to give you huge damage bonuses to either the next attack card you use or just overall the entirety of the turn, whether you're using the retain effect or actually casting Softy. That's going to be a big thing there. Also, like we talked about, all of the different creations are all exhaust cards, so they all work very well with an exhaust version of a 9 build there. But on top of that, you also have growth acceleration, which is going to apply the vulnerability debuff. As 9 is someone who doesn't hit multiple times, if you're able to put up 2 vulnerability stacks and then use Hue 2 times, you're going to be getting a giant amount of damage bonus for you there. So Orlia is going to be a fantastic character to pair with 9 for that reason. There's also a couple of other ways to add a vulnerable with Orlia in your party for 9, like with this version of Growing Creature that's just going to change it automatically into a big softy, right? And then automatically add vulnerability to all enemies there. That's going to work incredibly well with 9 as well. Another character that can add some vulnerability stacks to your opponents on top of that is going to be someone like Amir, if you're focusing in on a slower, tankier, sort of damage dealing style defense based team composition. You can do some AoE damage with Full Metal Hurricane, work this sort of Amir build together if you so desire. And as a free-to-play option, you can look at something like Metal Pierce and focus on using Metal Pierce, and actually you can even get, in addition to the vulnerability stacks that Metal Pierce puts on with its different epiphanies, you can get divine blessings on Metal Pierce that give you additional vulnerability stacks. That might not even be a divine blessing, it might just be a blessing of some sort. So you can put like multiple stacks of vulnerable on your enemies with Amir, who's also going to be synergistic in the fact that she is a defense-based damage dealer. Anything that can add vulnerability is a big way to buff up the damage of Nine. Some other characters to think about when pairing with Nine is the fact that, remind yourselves, with Hugh, if you exhaust it in any way, shape, or form, it will level up. It doesn't have to exhaust itself off of Fighting Spirit or casting it. So if you pair her in sort of somewhat of weird team with someone like Ray with Snack Time, where you have the ability to use Snack Time to heal, draw a bunch of cards, right? Exhaust some other cards in your hand. You can exhaust Hugh. Hugh will come back right away. You'll be able to get rid of the drawback of Snack Time, which is the fact that it needs to exhaust cards to draw cards, and turn that into a benefit for you there as well. You can pair Ray up with some other people to really buff up the damage and really accelerate how fast you can get to those higher levels of Hugh and do damage that way. In addition to that, she also has the ability to add morale to the team there. The downside of someone like Ray is that she doesn't really, outside of that, have a bunch of crazy ways to buff up the big damage costing cards like Q. A lot of Ray's sort of kit revolves around boosting void damage or cards that cost 1 or cards that cost 1 or less, right? So you're going to be missing out on sort of this epiphany, this card of Ray doing anything at all for your 9 specifically, but you are going to be able to really benefit from that big Snack Time buff, as well as Predator Blade giving multiple stacks of morale there. You can also use something like Dark Condensation to target the Hue, give it big damage bonus that turn as well for a small amount of AP. Narja as well is someone who can work a little bit okay with your 9. I know a lot of players and the devs especially said like, oh yeah, Narja and 9, we made them to work extremely well together. Really the only thing that Narja does super well with 9 is she's got the ability to increase damage taken, right, with Domain of Veracity, which is just a small 100% defense-based damage taken. We're already hitting something with like a 1,200% multiplier. Adding an additional 100% on top of a 1,200% mod isn't anything super crazy. You also have the Bottomless Hunger card to buff up defense-based damage this way as well. Another thing that you can utilize Narja with 9 is the Bottomless Hunger. The Epiphany 1, the Epiphany 2 as well are pretty good together, where you can reduce costs of cards in your hand in certain circumstances. And if you can craft a hand together of 9 in a Narja team with some other companion, some sort of compatriot for you there, you can actually reduce the cost of Hue down to like 0, down to 1, you're right, cast it, right, and then it's going to give you another 3-cost version of Hue that you then can just use your Fighting Spirit on to cast for yourself automatically. You are going to have to keep an eye out though, right? It's not going to be too difficult for you, but keep an eye out for your order of operations. You don't want to be reducing your Hue to 0, casting Fighting Spirit and having Fighting Spirit hit some random card that costs 1 in your hand still instead of Hue. What you want to do is reduce the Hue, cast the Hue, have it create a new 3-cost Hue, and then cast Fighting Spirit there. There's a lot of characters that you can pair 9 with, and this is just to get you guys started. And when it comes to memory fragments, you can just get away with a 2-2-2 build right now. This is how I have her set up. Crit damage, Executioner, right? Defense set, and then I always like to just throw like a random 2-piece Curse Corpse set on, because as you're going through different Chaos Manifestation stages, you guys have seen the different random epiphanies all the different characters get that can apply Agony. this is going to be a free 10% damage bonus there on top of that. Eventually, you're going to want to get the new set that's going to increase the exhaust damage of order cards by 30%. But until then, just go with like a 2-2-2 split and just aim for, you know, good old order damage over here, crit chance necklace, defense percent main here, and just try to get up your different stats to decent levels. Something like this is pretty decent. 50 crit rate, 180 crit damage, 350 defense. When it comes to partners, guess what? Wilhelmina is probably going to be one of, if not her best partner, for 2 reasons. Now, I'm going to compare like a version maxed out Refinement 5 Wilhelmina versus like an R1 of her own. But if you're using someone who puts vulnerability stacks on in your 9 team, a maxed out Wilhelmina is kind of insane because it gives you 24% defense increase. And then on top of that, it gives you 20% defense based damage of attack cards increased if you're attacking a vulnerable enemy, which is basically, well, going to be in every single versions of 9's best team. If you want to go for her own signature card, be my guest. It does have a little bit of shielding on it as well, but Wilhelmina is kind of insane for 9, especially if you're in this vulnerability team that we keep talking about. And the ego skill isn't the worst thing ever. It gives you a little fortitude, gives you a little morale as well. When it comes to her manifest egos, her E1 honestly is just something that I think should be based the baseline in her kit. It allows you to select what you're attacking when you use Fighting Spirit without the E1. It's entirely random. It isn't make or break for this character so far, because most of the times harder content is against single targets. However, I have had runs inside of different chaoses where she's like, oh, I hit the invincible enemy because reasons, I guess. Outside of that manifest ego though, I don't really feel like the rest of these are all that necessary, and I think that mainly she is totally fine at ego 0 or ego 1 depending on how you're wanting to play this character. Hopefully this gave you a solid baseline of what to expect out of 9, who to pair her with, and how to gear her up at the start. Hopefully I can have some future 9 content and other character content about all the different buffs we got this week. I'm still getting over being extremely ill. Hopefully you guys will see me on camera next or soon. Until then, make sure you smash the like smash the absolute crap out of it. It's the only thing the algo cares about apparently anymore. Outside of that, this channel is going to be deado. So until then, God bless, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.